Good evening, members of council, leadership team, guests, and those joining us remotely from home. We'll call this regularly scheduled council meeting of the 11th of July to order at 6 o'clock. Before beginning with our agenda this evening, we would once again like to start with our Indigenous land acknowledgement. We would begin this meeting by expressing our gratitude and acknowledging the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples dating back countless generations. Now, personally, we are connecting today from Tillsonburg, Ontario, which is an area of significance for many Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. Tillsonburg is located on the traditional territories of the Indigenous peoples and is covered by the Between the Lakes Treaty number 3 of 1792. As we gather on this traditional territory of Indigenous people dating back countless generations, we acknowledge the Ashinabek, the Haudenosaunee, and the Atawan people, showing respect for the long-standing relationships that Indigenous nations have to this land as they are the original caretakers. Thank you. For the adoption of the agenda for this evening's meeting, Councillor Rosart, you have a resolution, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Parker, that the agenda as prepared for the council meeting of July 11, 2022 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the agenda circulated. Seeing none, we'll call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? The resolution is carried. And with that agenda as now set, is there any declaration of keen interest, general nature thereof from members present? Seeing none. I would make a call on a roll call that there are 6 out of 7 members. We have quorum, and regrets are sent from Councillor Luciani regarding his attendance here this evening. The adoption of the minutes of June, the 27th, and special council meeting of the 28th. And Councillor Parker, you have that resolution, please.
I do. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gilvezi that the minutes from the June 27th, 2022 council meeting and of the June 28th, 2022 special council meeting be approved.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. We will move to the presentation portion of our agenda this evening. There's one item under presentations, and that's the annual or the review of the annual audited financial statements as prepared by Millard, Rose, and Roseberry. And I believe virtually in attendance to make presentation is Diane Lotta representing the firm. There she is. Welcome, Diane. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And I could be there in person, but this week I'm actually down looking at a beach view. So if I keep looking that way, it's like there's the water to my side there. So.
Well, it's good to have you here. And I think I've just given a brief introduction of your role in the meeting. So Diane, welcome. And please, this is your presentation.
Okay, I will go through and highlight a few things and some changes from the prior year. And if anyone has any questions, just let me know. There's 4 sets of statements, so I'll start with the main set. And page 1 is the standard management's responsibility for financial reporting. Page 2 and 3 is our standard independent auditors report. That report does go through our opinion, which is in accordance with Canadian public accounting sector accounting standards. It goes through our basis of opinion, other matters, which just references the budget figures and the note related to COVID-19, and then the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance, as well as the auditor's responsibility. Page 4 is a consolidated statement of financial position. Overall cash and investments were 9.2 million, which is a bit of a decrease of 400,000 from prior year. Taxes receivable are 691,000. Those are up 200,000, but that's primarily due to the prior year had a decrease due to the MPAC appeal. Accounts receivable of 4.6 million is up 2.2 million. And of that total balance, the county represents 3 million of that, and 2.1 million was for 2021 capital projects. The due from unconsolidated entities relates to hydro, water, and sewer. And investment in Tillsonburg Hydro has gone up 300,000 for a total of 12.1 million. Going down to liabilities, accounts payable of 5.5 million. That's up from the prior year, and most of that increase is just related to construction accounts just payable at the year end. The customer security deposits, 2.9 million, down quite a bit as there was a refund of several large deposits during the year. Deferred revenue of 7.5 million. That is up quite a bit from prior year, and included in that is amounts for roads of 2.3 million, gas tax 1.2 million, and building permits of 1.5 million. For the long-term debt, there was new debt issued for 750,000, and then there was the principal payments paid of 1.4 million. Going down to tangible capital assets of 70.4 million, there was additions of 6.1 million, amortization of 3.3 million, and assets under construction of 8.6 million, which gets you down to your accumulated surplus of just over 71 million at the end of the year. The next page goes through statement of operations. Looking at revenues of 30.3 million was up 4.9 million. There was a bit of increase in taxation of 400,000, and user charges were up 800,000. And then the rest of that change is down in the gain and loss on disposal of TCA. Looking at total expenses of 24.2 million, those were up 400,000 overall. A few line items, we see some differences. General government was up 500,000, protection up 600,000. And then there was a decrease in planning and development of 900,000, which gets you to the annual surplus of the year of 6.1 million, which is up 400,000 from the prior year. So the rest of the statements go through the various notes. We recommend that, you do go through, it does get a lot of details on the financial statement balances, and there's nothing new that we need to highlight in those for this year. It's just basically the ones you would have seen last year updated for current year numbers. And also with the overall statements, we issue the management letter, and that just goes through audit status, some significant risks, accounting policies, any significant accounting estimates, and the significant financial statements disclosures. So there's nothing that we need to bring to your attention that is a concern in any of those areas. We had some areas a couple of years ago, like those were promptly looked into by management and staff, and are no longer any kind of issue at this point. We also issue the waterworks and sanitary sewer financial statements, which just operates with the agreement with the county and as a flow through. So there's no net surplus or deficit resulting from those financial statements. And lastly, we have the trust funds. And if we just if we look at the statement of financial position, the overall cash and investments are 1.5 million at this year end compared to 1.4 million in the prior year. And looking at some of the things that happened through the trust funds, some of the bigger numbers are in the cemetery perpetual care. We have the investment income of 27,000, and we have other revenue of 33,000, which represents the perpetual care from the town. And then in that fund, that interest income does end up going back to the town as an expense. And looking at any disbursements, the biggest ones would be in the Jail Scott McLean column. There was expenses of 31,000, where 29,000 of that was the final invoice on the ice pad. So those are just some of the bigger things through that. And that just gives you a really quick high level summary of what happened in those statements, unless anyone has any specific questions or would like to add anything.
Well, first of all, thanks again, Diane, and thanks to your team at Millard Rose and Roseburg, and who continuously appear to make the process seamless. And are there questions from members of council to Diane regarding either the consolidated statements, the management letter, or any of the other subsequent material? Councillor Govesi.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Diane. I just have one question. So you go through and there's typical risks that you I guess you vet and go through, and it looked like everything was done very well. So kudos to the finance team. But on page 75 of our agenda, it says that you discuss fraud with management. And then there's a statement that says, we ask that council members alert us to an actual or suspected fraud affecting the company. What would council look for?
In terms of. That
Well,
would
the
just,
risk, I guess the significant risk to any company is fraud. So I mean, this is just in general terms that you've identified a bunch of different risks and fraud is one of them. And it looks like everything's good, so I don't want anyone to panic out there.
right,
It's just asking council members alert us to an actual or suspected fraud, but as a counselor, I'm asking, like, how would I identify that? And like, what
that
would I
would
be
just
looking
be
for?
if anything came to your attention that you are aware of. And didn't come up, like, if something didn't come up through an audit, if you knew like there was any kind of fraud, we're just saying, you know what, bring it up to us to make sure that we are also aware of that. Because if we find out stuff and we're like, oh, we didn't know that during the audit, that might need to, you know, refocus our attention more into that area that we might not have already looked at.
Thank you.
Further questions? That was contained just for the public's benefit in the management letter as addressed to council. So good question. Ultimately, council speaks through resolution. Remind us all of that as well. Further questions from members of council? Seeing none, there is a supportive resolution. Deputy Mayor, you have that resolution, please?
I do. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Esseltine. The council approves the 2021 financial statements as presented and the 2021 management letter be received.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there questions to the resolution? The Director of Finance available. Did you have any summary questions on the process as well, Mr. Puglia?
Just to thank Diane and her team for all the, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, to make the process seem seamless, and as well as the finance team and all the departments. I know with the transition in staff, just the cooperative nature received through all staff, and particularly Shane Serafinchin was very helpful as well, and took a key role in making sure that the audit went through. So thanks to all staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Council would echo that. Are there any further questions to the resolution? Seeing none, we'll call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. Thanks again, Diane. And you're certainly welcome to stay with us for the balance of our agenda this evening, or you can enjoy the sunset. So.
Well, it is unique because I actually have my mom and dad and both my sisters here. They were all able to come today, and it hasn't been the five of us together since I think we all lived under one roof. So
we'll extend our best and thanks again for your effort.
Thank you.
We'll move to the public meeting portion and planning section of our agenda. And there's one application for minor variance that will require council to sit as committee of adjustment. Councilor Rosart, you have that resolution, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Galvaisi, that the council move into committee of adjustment to hear an application for minor variance at 6:13 p.m.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That resolution is carried. This is a minor variance application A09-22. It's an application to decrease the minimum perpendicular width of aisle for 90-degree parking from 24 feet to 22.6 feet to facilitate the construction of an 18-unit multi-residential building at 31 Victoria Street. And the owner is Tillsonburg Nonprofit Housing Corporation, and representing them tonight would be Agent Jason Hunwicks of Renders and Law Limited. And it's a pleasure to welcome back to the chamber Mr. Eric Gilbert, who will lead council through this application.
Thank you. As noted, this is a minor variance application for the parking standards. Council did approve a zone change application in October of 2021 to allow for an affordable housing development The development did get, was awarded funding from the County of Oxford, and they are going through the site plan process, expected to be finalized shortly with construction starting shortly thereafter. The purpose of the variance is to reduce the parking aisle width. When they got the detailed design with the parking lot design, they noticed that the one neighbor to the north, there's an existing fence, and that neighbor wasn't really wanted that fence to stay where it was, as they have traditionally maintained all of that land. So the applicant has shifted the parking area to the south a little bit, and they're seeking relief of this 0.3 or 1.3 feet to allow for the parking aisle to be 6.9 meters rather than 7.3 meters. And this will also ensure that the existing fence can remain, does not be replaced, and the extent of work can be minimized for the parking area. The applicant, the parking lot was reviewed by town staff, and staff don't have any concern with the reduced parking aisle width. The applicant provided parking movement drawings and diagrams to show how vehicles can enter and exit the lot. And as well, the applicant has indicated that typically most of the tenants don't have large vehicles, so they don't see a concern with this. Given this, staff recommend approval application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilbert. Are there questions from members of council to the planner on this application? Seeing none, this is a request for a minor variance. It's a public meeting held under the Planning Act for the purpose of reviewing this application. This process does allow for any person in attendance or those who have submitted correspondence of support or concern in advance. However, if anyone who appeals this decision has not provided council with oral or written submissions at or prior to this public meeting, the local planning appeal tribunal does have the power to dismiss the appeal. I understand, is there an agent representing the applicant in attendance tonight or virtually? Okay, my notes. There's no Jason Hunwicks in attendance. Okay, well then with the support of council, I'd call upon Mr. Hunwicks if he's prepared to make comment to the application.
I'm remote.
Mr. Hunwicks, can you hear me? And I would just perhaps ask for any support that you have for the application regarding Tillsonburg Nonprofit Housing Corporation. That's before council.
Yes, so we, as part of the site plan approval process, we are submitting movement diagrams to show that the reduced parking aisle does not affect the movement in and out of the parking spaces with the minor reduction that we're requesting. We feel like we have a nice relationship. The owner has a nice relationship with the neighbor, and in order to facilitate this shorter or the narrower aisle, we want to maintain, as Eric said, the fence to the property of the neighbor, and in that way it would minimize any disruption to their property as well as ours, and then just to keep that nice relationship going with the community. So
Thank you very much.
So we will be submitting the movement diagrams during, that was one of the comments during permit and site plan approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunwicks. Are there questions for the agent representing the applicant? Hearing none, there are no registered or pre-registered speakers. Is there anyone in attendance this evening that would like to speak in favor of the application, in opposition to the application, or has any general questions regarding the application? Seeing none, we'll turn to Deputy Mayor Barris, who has a resolution regarding this application.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Esseltine. Excuse me, that the town of Tillsonburg Committee of Adjustment approves application file A09-22 submitted by Town of Tillsonburg Nonprofit Housing Corporation for lands described as parts of lots 687 to 690, 715, Plan 500, parts 1 to 7 of 41R 10118 in the town of Tillsonburg as it relates to relief from section 5.24.1.6 parking spaces and parking aisle standards, table 5.24.1.6, parking spaces and aisle standards, minimum perpendicular width of the aisle to decrease the minimum perpendicular width of the aisle for 90-degree parking from 7.3 meters to 6.9 meters.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor, questions for members of council? Seeing none, we're prepared to call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. That completes the Committee of Adjustment responsibilities this evening. Councillor Gavezi, you have a resolution to move us out of committee and back into regular council session, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Parker, that council move out of the Committee of Adjustment and move back into regular council session at 6:21 PM.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. We move to a first of a zone change application. This is zone change application ZN 722-03. It's an application for zone change that proposes to rezone subject properties from special low density type 1A to special low density residential type 2 to allow for the development of semi-detached dwellings on the subject properties at 3, 5, and 7 Sycamore Drive. And special provisions have also been requested for reduced lot frontage, reduced lot area, reduced lot depth, and reduced minimum interior side yard. The owner is Landmark Homes, and the applicant for this particular request is Jacob Hebert. And the agent representing the applicant tonight will be Trevor Benjamin of CJDL. At this point in time, Mr. Gilbert, you have comment on this application, please?
Thank you. This is a zone change to allow for the development of semi-detached dwellings. The lands are part of the Oak Park Estates plan of subdivision. The owner has conditionally sold the lands to the applicant who proposes to construct the semi-detached dwellings. There is relief requested of the required lot frontage from 10.5 meters to 7.7 meters, the minimum lot area from 315 square meters to 260 square meters. The front yard depth, this relief is actually already in place in the current zoning. The R1A23 zone does allow for the 6-meter front yard depth, but the R2 zone requires a 7-meter depth. So the applicant's requesting to carry forward the existing front yard depth permissions, as well as a reduction of the interior side yard width. The street was recently constructed and paved, and the building permits are able to be issued for these properties as the certificate of preliminary acceptance was recently issued. There was one letter of objection received, which was circulated to council today. Through this application, a total of 6 units are proposed on the 3 existing lots. Staff for the opinion the proposal is consistent with the Planning Act and PPS direction to permit and facilitate all forms of residential intensification and redevelopment, including additional units. And although there's no semi-detached dwellings or housing forms in this area other than single attached dwellings currently, it's the opinion of staff that the proposed semi-detached dwellings will still be compatible with existing and planned development and can coexist without negative impacts. The semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the low density residential designation, which is what this property is designated. And the semi-detached dwellings will still provide all of the required parking and will have similar setbacks to the existing and planned development in the area. The proposal also complies with the other infill criteria in the official plan. The servicing of the lots will be, if that is required, that will happen in accordance with county policy, and the applicant will have to pay the applicable fees at time of connection. Given this, staff recommend approval of the application, and we're able to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there questions for the planner from members of council? Start with Council Parker, please.
Eric, thanks for the presentation today. With the reduced minimum required front yard depth, that is going to affect parking in the driveways, correct?
It's the same relief that's already there today if a single attached dwelling was built. So the R1A 23 zoning that's currently in place has that same front yard depth of 6 meters.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, Councilor Gavese, please?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, too, Eric. My concern is the lot coverage. So it's quite significant from 3,300 square feet, almost 3,400 square feet down to about 2,800 square feet. We're seeing more and more of this. So I believe it was like a couple of years ago that like percentage of lot coverages was upped. Am I correct on that? Was it for this zoning as well?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Gavese, the relief requested is for the minimum lot area, not coverage. So they'll still meet the lot coverage, primarily because of that the lots are actually deeper than what you typically see. These lots were created in the early 90s or mid 90s. So they have, I think, 35-meter depths. So the relief requested is for the lot area from 315 square meters to 260. So it's not directly related to lot coverage.
So the coverage will be within what's allowable. It's just that it's a smaller lot for what's being proposed.
The bylaw requires for a semi-detached dwelling a greater lot area per unit cumulatively.
And why is that? Like, I guess my point being is that there's rules that are set out and we're seeing more and more variances coming forward that go against, there has to be a reason why those things are put in place. Like I'm thinking about drainage, I'm thinking about loss of green space, I'm thinking about all those things that we're fastly losing. So why are those rules put into place?
Typically, your lot area provision ensures you have area for amenity space, your open space, your parking in the front, and to have your dwelling fit within all your setbacks. In this case, again, because of the lot depth, the dwellings will still comply with the landscaped open space requirements. They'll still comply with the rear yard depth, and they'll still comply with the it'll be the same front yard depth that's there today. I think we're seeing the increased request, one, for affordability. In the past, perhaps people wouldn't have tried to put 2 semis on this lot, because to be honest, they were a very small portion of our total building permit makeup. But that's quickly changing. So I think that's the primary reason behind the request. It's an intensification.
I have one final question through you, Mr. Mayor. So later, it's in actually one of the other reports, there was a comment about the interior side yard having to be 1.5. And I know quite a few of these are going through with 1.2. So is there any concern with it just being 3.9 feet for the interior side yard?
Typically, a single attached dwelling with an attached garage, both sides are allowed to be 1.2. So that's fairly standard. The only times when that's not possible is when there is a requirement for a drainage swale from a catch basin in the rear yard. And in that case, there's typically an easement registered on title, which kind of trumps or overrides the minimum interior side yard. The townhouse ones are a little bit greater Because typically for those ones, there's also a requirement for like a sidewalk or pedestrian access on the end units to get to the backyard of the interior units. So those are a little bit greater, but for semi-detached dwelling or a single detached dwelling on an interior lot, the 1.2 is pretty typical.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions from members of council? Councillor Esseltine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Eric. So just a very quick question here, Eric. Do you know if these homes are slated for purchase or for rent?
I believe it's the applicant's intention to, after they're constructed, to sever them and offer them for purchase individually.
Think further? Perhaps more appropriate for the agent representing the applicant. But in your planning experiences regarding this subdivision, some of what you've already referenced about the history of this development in Landmark Homes, has there been any consideration? Landmark owns it. They've sold these three, I assume conditionally, to a developer. This is his application. But Sycamore is a new street. It's going to be a long street that goes from, I believe, William out to Beach.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken. And these are the kind of starting at the William and moving out. And that's, you get around to Beach and there's, some of the construction in that area far more significant and even in the William area. So has there been ever any consideration or conversation either to or from the property owner of the draft plan of subdivision to be a little more all-encompassing with their approach rather than these three lots?
I believe the property owner has sold the balance of these lots to a local developer who did the Beach Boulevard extension. And I understand that these three lots, along with the two in the next application, were more one-offs that were sold to the applicant.
Okay. Anything further from members of council? Seeing none, reminding us all in the public that this is a public meeting under the Planning Act. Process allows for any person in attendance this evening or that is registered to speak or that has pre-registered any concerns. I did want to just make one mention in advance of inviting a representative of the applicant is that there was the one concern that was referenced by the planner from Kathy and John Laverty, and their comments would be included. I'm going to call upon now Mr. Trevor Benjamin. Trevor is the agent representing the applicant from CJDL. And then we have one other registered speaker in a moment. So first of all, welcome, Trevor.
Good evening. Thank you for having me and hearing our application for zoning change. As mentioned, I'm Trevor Benjamins. I'm an associate planning technician with CJDL Consulting Engineers here in Tillsonburg, and I'll be able to help answer any questions you might have. And thank you to Eric Gilbert and the supportive report.
I don't want to assume, but in your representation as an agent for the applicant, that you're supportive of the application and the recommendations of the county planning department.
Yes.
I don't want to assume, that's kind of your job.
Yes.
Okay, are there questions for Mr. Benjamins from members of council, please? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Parker, please.
Through you, Mayor Molnar, to Mr. Benjamins. With the depth of the front yard, do you guys foresee any issues reducing that and creating excess parking on the road in a neighborhood that's already established, as well as I would say overhang on sidewalks or anything like that?
I guess to answer that question, our proposal is that we would meet the parking requirements outlined in the zoning bylaw, which I believe is two parking spaces. One can be used for the garage. An alternative option we could also consider is creating a double wide driveway in front of a single car garage.
Thank you.
Counselor Govesi, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I actually like your point about creating the double wide driveway because this is a concern where we're seeing more and more in subdivisions. There's more vehicles parked on the street, which makes it difficult for emergency vehicles to navigate. And in looking at this photograph, the homes that are existing have wide driveways. So they obviously have more than 1.5, or two, actually it's 2 spaces. You can fit like 4 or 6 cars in some of these driveways. And I think the neighboring community, well, we've seen a couple, this is becoming a concern on how do we deal with all the vehicles that are parked all over the roads. I don't know where they disappear in the winter time when we have the bylaw enforced, but I think it's a growing problem that we need to be aware of. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Kind of going back to, I believe, what Mr. Gilbert had indicated, that part, well, is different. It's actually already provided for in the zoning. So and let's be hesitant that we are I don't even know the process, as far as the site plan, but I guess the CBO's office, not to prejudice the decision here with council, but those options potentially would be available at the potential detriment of green space. Are there any further questions for Mr. Benjamins? And I believe it's my opportunity on behalf of council to welcome Andre Fournier. Andre, if you could come introduce yourself and your address as well, and then just make comment to council and the community, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Andre Fournier. Along with my wife, I reside at 22 William, which is lot 63 in the official subdivision plan. Now, coming from a mixed residential survey, when we decided to move to Tillsonburg about 10 years ago, we were looking to purchase a new home in a community of single detached homes. We did our due diligence, talked to Landmark Homes, and verified with the town that the subdivision was indeed for single dwelling. We even got a copy of the survey plan at that time. Now, we understand that any new subdivision, and I mean new subdivision, must have a blend of mixed residential dwellings. However, this is not a new subdivision. It was approved under Section 51 of the then Planning Act on December 14, 1994. We bought a larger lot for privacy. We bought in good faith, and now we feel deceived by the fact that some of these semis will abut our property or change the view of our backyard. Basically, instead of looking at 3 properties, we're now going to be looking maybe at 5 or 6 small semis with smaller backyards. A local real estate agent implied that these semis detached home will affect the monetary value of my property and also those at 24 William and 2 Sycamore. If council approved this application, it would be hard to deny similar application in the future. How many more semis will be permitted? 6, 12, 24? Will council then allow townhouse to be built in the survey? And then if council approves semis, would approve semis at address 6, 8, and 10 on Elmlock Drive, this would result in my property being surrounded by semis, and this is not what we signed for. Now, notwithstanding our objection against this proposal, if council is adamant about having semi-detached home built in a survey, council should reject the reason for our objection, reject this proposal, and suggest to Landmark Home to build an empty lot from 9 to 29 or 8 to 28 Sycamore Drive, or on any lot from 67 to 66 on Hemlock Drive. Basically, what we bought, we wanted some privacy, and all of a sudden, boom, this is happening. That's not what we bought the survey for. We bought in a survey that was designated as semi-detached, not, I'm sorry, as a single homes. Thank you. That's it. I mean, you know.
And first and importantly, welcome and thank you for being part of this process. Are there questions for Mr. Fournier from members of council, please? I just confirming, William Street runs east-west, then kind of north-south, and then heads back out to meet with Beach as well. Just so that I'm more familiar with, you don't, to be personal on your personal address, but you've indicated 22 William Street. It's on the east side of Williams when it's going in a north-south direction of the, almost, does Sycamore coming east, almost if someone's coming down there at night, their headlights are basically coming into your resident? You at
No,
the dead end of Sycamore?
no. I'm not on Sycamore, I am on
No.
William.
I understand that, sir. Are you at almost the dead end of Sycamore when it reaches William? That's where I've got 22 William here.
Okay, basically, there's gonna be Hemlock. There's gonna be 22, then there's 24, and then Sycamore is there. If you've been driving around, there's a big white house beside my house.
Okay, you're
So
further down, you're further down.
The house 24 is a corner lot and 22 is also a corner lot, but on different streets.
Okay. Google Maps isn't helping, but thank you. Any further questions then from members of council? Deputy, please.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a question for the applicant, although I appreciate his bringing it here. And I'm not sure if this is a question, and maybe it's too late to ask the planner, but are there any more semi-detached homes on William or Sycamore? As the applicant or the gentleman standing here is saying, he bought in good faith for single families. Are there any more detached homes, semi-detached homes on those two streets? I don't believe there are. And I'm just wondering, you know, the applicant has chosen those two or those three lots to build the semis on. And I just wonder if there's an alternate plan or an alternate three lots that he could build them on.
Oh, it's a concurrence of council, and we've never cut positive dialogue off. We'll provide the opportunity to address the question back to the planner or other senior leadership. Can we?
I have a direct question.
To Mr. Fournier?
No, sir.
Okay. Are there any further questions for Mr. Fournier?
Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you, sir. Can we get the resolution on the floor?
We can, sure, certainly.
And the resolution is Councillor Esseltine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by
And then
myself,
you're first.
seconded by Deputy Mayor Barris, that the Council of the Town of Tillsonburg approves the zone change application submitted by Landmark Homes, Inc., whereby the lands described as lots 90, 91, and 92, registered Plan 41M-144 in the Town of Tillsonburg, known municipally as 3, 5, and 7 Sycamore Drive, are to be rezoned from special low-density residential type 1A zone, R1A-23, to special low-density residential type 2 zone, R2-SP, to facilitate the development of semi-detached dwellings on the subject property with reduced lot frontages, lot area, front yard depth, and interior side yard widths.
Thank you, Councillor Esseltine, and we'll start to speak to the resolution or questions and with latitude to the planner as well from the deputy mayor.
Thank you. Through you to the planner, Mr. Mayor. My question is, on the streets of Sycamore and William, are there any current semi-detached homes on those two streets?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Barris. No, there's these three lots together with the two in the next application are the only semi-detached dwellings I'm aware of in that Oak Park Estates area, you know, north of Concession Street West and west of Quarter Town Line. It's all singles right now.
And a follow-up, Mr. Mayor, are there other properties that are coming up that Landmark Homes currently own in that area that aren't adjoined now by residential properties that are occupied? Other lots in that subdivision, in Oak Park subdivision?
Certainly the Hemlock Drive and Walnut Drive and Chestnut Drive aren't constructed yet. So those don't abut anything currently. But I'm not, I get the understanding that this isn't so much Landmark's application as Mr. Hebert's. So I'm not sure what plans he has to try to acquire future properties in the next phase.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there further questions from members of council? And we're speaking either to the resolution and latitude that the planner is available to assist. Councilor Rosar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Gilbert. A question is, why are we allowing these buildings to be built within a subdivision that just has homes? I thought we usually stay consistent with what's already being built there, and we're not doing that here. Why?
In this case, although the plan was registered in 1994, for all purposes, this street is new development. There's no houses currently except for abutting ones on William or to the north on Beach. And the designation does permit a mix of housing types, as we see in new subdivisions. That's the reason why staff are supportive of the application.
Thank you.
Further questions, the resolution? Got a stiff bag for myself and asked the plan or something. Because Mr. Fournier's introduced some, I'm always more concerned about the alignment of the lot size at the back. So that people have historically, if they're 50-foot lots, then the ones adjacent on the back, they're matching 50-50-50 or 70-70-70. That along with emergency egress and access and having multiple entrances to any, subdivision development. But I would tend to think there's a greater impact on the existing neighbors at 3 Sycamore than there is at 5 and 7. Would your planning experience, I don't impact being emotional, or I'm just talking about direct positional impact, be greater at 3 to existing properties and property owners than 5 and 7 because of the current development stage of the rest of Sycamore?
I would concur with that.
Interesting to see if the applicant would amend their application to build single on 3 and satisfy the 5 and 7 with their application for the duplex or multi-residential, but that's not the application. I recognize that, but I'm trying to represent the interests and concerns of the neighbors as well. Any other questions or comments? Resolutions on the floor? Any other additional options? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is not carried. No, there's only 6 of us. It's 5-1. Thank you very much. I'm not speaking on behalf of all of council. Actually, I should not speak. There may be meat on the bone that wasn't recognized because there was a defeat of a positive resolution. So, and always encourage other opportunities from the development community, along with the planning and our building department as well. So, thank you. You're not going very far, Mr. Benjamins. We're going to move on to a second zone change application. This is excuse me. Zone change application ZN 72204. It proposes to rezone the subject properties from low density residential type 1A to special low density residential type 2 to permit the development of semi-detached dwellings on the subject properties at 158 and 160 Concession Street East. Special provisions are also requested regarding similarly reduced lot frontage, lot area, front yard depth, and a reduced minimum interior side yard width. Excuse me. The owner of these properties is Jacob Hebert. Agent representing the applicant this evening is Mr. Benjamin's a CJDL, and a similar correspondence that neighbors Kathy and John, or residents Kathy and John Lafferty had recognized both zone change applications when they introduced comments to the planning process. So, Mr. Gilbert, you have comment, please?
Thank you. This application is similar to the last ones we just dealt with. The context, this one is a little bit different. There is institutional use consisting of a church immediately to the east. And to the south, on the opposite side of Concession Street West, that is a high density designated block. And it will be part of a future subdivision proposal that'll be coming before council in the near future. So in this area, there will be a mix of housing types and densities, particularly on the south side of the road. There is one existing residence at 164 Concession Street West. That's a single detached dwelling. And 162 next to that one is currently vacant, but that is proposed for a single detached dwelling. So in this case, the semi-detached dwellings would be between the vacant lot and the church property to the east. Staff for support of the application, as it does fulfill a number of official plan policies and goals for intensification within the town. And staff recommended approval of the application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilbert. Questions from members of council to the planner regarding this application? Just one, then seeing none. I do have one question regarding that vacant lot. I would suggest it's to the east of the existing home and west of the properties under consideration. Did you reference east of the R1A? Actually, it is an R1A. On your map. So west of the subject properties, east of the existing house, is there a open unoccupied residential zone parcel of land there?
Yes, I believe it's also owned by the applicant.
And did you reference, it was in your verbal presentation, I thought that I heard you say that it already has a multi-residential or
No,
application? It does not.
It does not.
Okay, it may have been the way the words were.
The
That was the only clarity I'm looking for.
The multi-residential would be across the road on the
Okay.
south side of Concession Street West.
Very good. Final. Seeing none, Mr. Benjamin, once again, thank you for your attendance representing the applicant on this particular zone change application.
Thank you very much. CGDL believes that this application does fit into the surrounding land use a little bit better, and we are in agreement and support Eric Gilbert's report. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Are there questions for the agent for the applicant? Seeing none, this is a full public meeting held under the Planning Act. And council invites any that have either pre-registered or in attendance tonight to make opinion known, either in favor, in opposition. I would also ask if there's anyone else in attendance tonight that has any general questions regarding this application. And confirming again through the clerk and director of corporate services that we had no one registered, just for the record.
That's correct.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Clerk. And if anyone appeals this decision is not provided with counsel with oral or written submissions at the public meeting, then the local planning appeal tribunal does have the power to dismiss said appeal. I believe at that point, unless there's any further deliberations, I would call upon Councillor Govesi for the resolution, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Esseltine, that the council of the town of Tillsonburg approves the zone change application submitted by Landmark Homes, Inc., whereby the lands described lots 43 and 44, registered plan 41M-144 in the town of Tillsonburg, known municipally as 158 and 160, Concession Street West, are to be rezoned from low-density residential type 1A zone to special low-density residential type 2 zone to facilitate the development of semi-detached dwellings on the subject property with reduced lot frontages, lot area, front yard depth, and interior side yard widths.
Thank you, Counselor. Any questions to the resolution from members of council? Prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Resolution is carried. Thank you. We move to our final planning application for this evening. It's a official plan amendment application OP 22-06-7 and a zone change application ZN 722-06. And that proposes to redesignate the subject property located at 133 North Street East from service commercial to residential and medium density residential to facilitate the development of a 6-unit townhouse block. The owner is Tillsonburg Developments Incorporated and WH Developments Incorporated. And once again, agent representing the owners will be Mr. Trevor Benjamin of CJDL. So Mr. Gilbert, do you have comment on the applications, please?
Thank you. The subject property is on the south side of North Street East, just west of Danbrook Automotive. The property is a total area of 0.63 acres. The area proposed to be developed for townhouses is approximately 0.44 acres, and is currently vacant. There's an existing single detached dwelling that was conditionally severed by the Land Division Committee, which has an area of 734 square meters. It's proposed that the existing single detached dwelling, or it's recommended that that be redesignated to low density development as it's just one dwelling, and be rezoned to R3, which would permit the existing dwelling as well as provide some options for increased density in the future, given that it's located right next to or would be located next to a medium density development. The current zoning is a special service commercial holding zone, which permits a number of service commercial uses. And the purpose of the holding provision was to ensure that the property was connected to municipal sanitary sewers. The relief being requested through the zone change application is to reduce the minimum lot area for an N townhouse unit, the minimum lot frontage for an interior townhouse unit, the lot frontage for an N townhouse unit, the interior side yard width for the N townhouse unit, and increase the maximum printed lot coverage. That was requested from the R3 zone. Staff recommend that the property actually be rezoned to a medium density zone with a special provision to allow for the increased coverage. Other than that, the medium density zone would permit all of the applicants' requested relief. The official plan requires that prior to considering proposal to redesignate service commercial land, that the town and county council must be assured that the town still has an adequate supply of service commercial lands. Based on the recent land supply estimates, the gross developable supply of commercial institutional land in the town is approximately 44.5 acres. This site that's proposed to be redesignated is 0.44 acres. So given the minor size of the site and the fact that historically it has not developed for service commercial uses as it was zoned for since at least, I believe, 2000, staff recommend that the conversion is minor and the town will still have sufficient vacant commercial lands within the town to accommodate expected growth. The lands are suitable for medium density development as the property is located on an arterial road and the 6 additional units are not anticipated to impact the traffic or turning movements in the neighborhood or on North Street East. The property will be subject, or the project will be subject to site plan control or matters such as servicing, fencing, grading, and traffic will be required to be satisfied to the satisfaction of the town and county. As well, the proposal does satisfy the other official plan criteria for medium density designation, as the property is relatively close to schools, leisure facilities, shopping, and parks are within a reasonable distance. As well, the buildings to the south on Sandy Court, many of those are two stories in height, and they'll be compatible with the townhouses that are proposed. The density of the site will be 14 units per acre, which is in line with the medium density targets. And as noted, staff recommend that the existing dwelling be designated low density and zoned on R3 zone, and the lands with the townhouses be designated medium density with a medium density special zone. With respect to the interior side yard width for the end unit, engineering staff have confirmed that the 1.8 meters is still sufficient for the pedestrian access easement that's required to access the interior townhouse units, and would still allow for a grading or drainage swale if required. However, the stormwater from this site is expected to go to the storm pond to the south in Sandy Court, as these lands were part of that development originally. Staff recommend that the town support the official plan amendment and approve in principle the requested zone change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilbert. Are there questions for the planner from members of council, please? Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the planner. What does an R3 allow that an R1 or an R2 cottage industry does not allow?
An R3 zone would allow for like a fourplex, where R2 would only permit a single, R2 would permit a single or a semi-detached or a duplex.
So it's residents as opposed to some sort of business being run out of there, be it a cottage industry or a retail business or whatever.
They would only be allowed a home occupation.
Thank you.
Further questions from members of council? Not necessarily germane to the planning aspect of this, and I find maybe it's just the size. Probably again, it's got CJDL on it as far as the, but planning perspective, 6 units. How many egress points are there to North Street East?
I believe the county standard is that they have shared driveways, so there'd be 3 or shared entrances. So there'd be 3 new entrances onto North Street
Okay.
East.
No, that was more of a site plan issue, kind of beyond the planning aspect, but moderate relevance. Anything further for the planner? So once again, representing the agent, the agent for the applicant, Mr. Benjamins from CJDL, prepared to make comments, sir?
Yes, thank you so much for hearing our application this evening, and I'm the author of the planning justification report that was submitted alongside this application, and we are in support of the recommending that county council advise the county of Oxford for the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment to be approved. Thank you.
Are there questions for the agent of the applicant? Recognizing your reference to the Hemson study of 2020, and I still think it's a positive report beyond your reference to that. Once again, this is a public meeting under the Planning Act for the purposes of the dual purpose of consideration of an official plan amendment and a zone change application. If anyone who appeals this decision has not provided council with oral or written submissions, either advance or at this public meeting this evening, then the local planning appeal tribunal has the power to dismiss said appeal. And confirming again through the clerk that there has been no pre-registered speakers.
That is correct.
Thank you. And that I would then call on anyone in attendance that would like to speak either in favor of the application, opposition to the application, or has any general questions or concerns regarding the same. Seeing none, we'll move to the resolution. I believe Councillor Parker, you have that, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Rosehart, that the council of the town of Tillsonburg advise county council that the town supports the application to amend official plan file number OP 22067 submitted by Tillsonburg Developments, Inc. and WH Developments, Inc. for lands described as Lot 17, Registered Plan 41M 205 in the town of Tillsonburg to redesignate the subject lands from service commercial to low and medium density residential, And further, that the council of the town of Tillsonburg approves in principle the zone change application file number ZN 72206 submitted by Tillsonburg Developments, Inc. and WH Developments, Inc. for lands described as Lot 17, Registered Plan 41M 205 in the town of Tillsonburg to rezone the lands from Special Service Commercial Zone CC 10 to Low Density Residential Type 3 Zone R3 and Special Medium Density Residential Zone RMSP to permit the development of 6 residential street fronting townhouse units.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parker. Is there any final discussion regarding this resolution as introduced? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That resolution is carried. And with the zone change in principle, the recommendation to County Council regarding the official plan support, is there an indication of when that would appear on an Oxford County Council agenda for the benefit of the public and the applicant?
The application for fish plan amendments proceeding to the August County Council meeting.
Okay. Thank you. We will proceed. That concludes our public meeting portion of the agenda this evening. There are no planning reports. Understand there's no deputation on committee reports. Just for the public's benefit and for council members as well, remind us that the access and the opportunity for access to primary vaccination and booster shots remains available in the community. The next available dates are the 12th, 19th, and 26th of July from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. The back parking lot area of Memorial Park at the Tillsonburg Community Complex of 45 Hardy Ave. While walk-ins are available, and please don't deter, advanced appointments are a benefit. You can reach reach out to 1-800-943-3900. It's a ministerial Ministry of Health GoVax bus that rotates throughout, in this particular case, Southwestern Ontario. Information items. There are 2 items on the agenda tonight. A congratulatory communication from the Footprints in the Sand Foundation. Of course, that's Margaret Fishback Powers, one of the favorite sons and daughters of the town of Tillsonburg. And there's additional correspondence from Ontario Energy Board, the OEB, regarding notice to Enbridge customers. And I believe, Councillor Esseltine, you have that resolution, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Rosehart, that the information item from Footprints in the Sand Foundation dated June 16th, 2022, and from the Ontario Energy Board dated June 17th, 2022, be received as information.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there discussion for members of council on either of those 2 items, please? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding the Footprints in the Sand Foundation, many years I was neighbors with the Powers. They were right around the corner from where I live, and I got to know them very well. And Margaret, of course, is the author of the famous Footprints in the Sand poem from 1964. They now live in British Columbia, and they usually come here once a year. And COVID has held them back, and they had full intentions of being here for Tillsonburg's 150th. And they canceled about 3 weeks prior to that for health purposes. They're not young, but they're wonderful people, and they certainly have Tillsonburg at heart. And I'm glad that she sent that note officially to the mayor's office for what they did. Hopefully they're here next year, and she'll make some comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anything further? And we're prepared to call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. We'll move to staff reports, the CAO 22-02, which involves recommendations regarding the memorandum of understanding and direction, the MOUD with Tillsonburg Hydro Incorporated. Councillor Parker, you have a resolution, please?
I do, moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Barris. The council receives the report CAO 22-04 recommendations regarding the MOUD with Tillsonburg Hydro Incorporated, and that council endorses the recommendations contained within report CAO 22-02 recommendations regarding MOUD with Tillsonburg Hydro Incorporated.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Very comprehensive report. In advance of asking for questions from members of council, did you have any summary comments, Mr. Pratt, that you'd like to make or prepared to make?
Thank you, Mayor Molnar. Yeah, just to summarize the staff report in front of us. Council will recall receiving two subsequent reports on May 24th and June 16th. And it was at the June 16th meeting that council wanted some more information and directed the CAO to make comment and recommendation on the MOUD with THI. So within this report, mainly the issues of concern addressed by the THI board were sections 4.0 board composition. So the report focuses on that section and makes comments on all the recommended changes. And of course, as council requested, provides recommendations. I think it's important to note that with those recommendations, it is based on the current 7-member board, and also you'll see their recommendation was to go forward that 7-member board as well, but have movement to go up to additional members as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from members of council? Resolutions on the floor. Councillor Parker, please.
Not so much a question, more so a comment. Kyle, thank you for bringing this forward. I'm fully supportive of the recommendations that you've put forward, so thank you.
Councillor Gabezi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo Councillor Parker's sentiment. The report was very detailed. Initially, when I had put the resolution on the floor, this is exactly what I was looking to receive back from you. So well done. And I will be supporting it as well. Thank you.
Further questions from members of council? Couple things from my perspective. I would echo the comments relative to the extent and the direct responses that were originally introduced and the subsequent detail of the response as contained in the report and the recommendation. So not concerns or real questions regarding the report and the recommendation as much so as the town, the corporation of the town of Tillsonburg, the corporation, not the shareholder, but the corporation of the town of Tillsonburg is one of 2 signatories to the MOUD. So certainly advancing the corporation of the town of Tillsonburg by adopting a resolution, but that in no way ultimately satisfies both signatures to an agreement. So I'd be more, interested in knowing what potential next steps are, if not ratified by the board of THI, and then what level of communication and review have we taken regarding the THI bylaw as was introduced recently, because that bylaw and this MOUD, and even if we accept everything in this MOUD, which I concur with, is not then consistent with the existing terms and conditions in certain sections of the THI bylaw. So there are moving pieces, and I just would look for, any potential next steps, or that we're going to make a recommendation appropriately and suggest without prejudice, and then just await any response, which is appropriate as well. So, did you have kind of any just game plan?
So, Mr. Mayor, that was a loaded question. You had about 3 in there, I
Not to
think.
you, to. Okay, it wasn't intended to be loaded. It was
Okay.
intended to be
So I can break that down. So yeah. so
pragmatic.
in regards to the THI bylaw, the resolution was clear to only comment on the MOUD. So that's what we did. I did make comment in the staff report regarding the THI bylaw. I believe there was only one small recommendation they had in that, and that was regarding the composition. So that would go hand in hand with each other. And I believe for next steps, we would have council create the committee, which is one of the recommendations, and then have the clerk's office reach out to THI to let them know next steps, and of course, request any submissions for the committee's review for the board.
Okay, no, I'm satisfied with that. And maybe I'm just trying not to look at all the options and opportunities. So very good. Are there further questions to the resolution that's on the floor? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. And thank you again, Mr. Pratt. We move to economic development portion of our departmental reports. There's a report here regarding support of a Economic Development Advisory Committee resolution regarding zoning bylaw height restrictions. Councillor Govesi, you have that resolution, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Rosehart, that the resolution from the Economic Development Advisory Committee regarding the existing maximum height restrictions for residential buildings within the town of Tillsonburg be referred to Oxford County Planning for review.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion from members of council. Appreciate, and I think the key word from the resolution from EDAC was reassess. So I believe that's the momentum that this resolution tonight will give. It's the opportunity to reassess and provide that impetus to the county. There had been text in the report that contact had been made with the fire chief and the fire rescue services. There'd been inability but time sensitivity regarding the CBO and our building department's comments. So not to speak to those tonight, but I would encourage, because it's not in the resolution, but it would certainly be expected that once the subsequent report to council is made regarding the feedback from the planning department, it would also include a more comprehensive update from fire department, physical restrictions or opportunities regarding the equipment and the building department and codes and things like that. Do I understand that to be correct? Okay. Anything further from members of council then? We'll call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. We'll maintain our momentum with economic development. This is a contract award relative to an earlier RFP for real estate services. Deputy Mayor, please.
Yes, it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Parker, that the RFP 2022-001 real estate services contract be awarded to Avison Young for a period until December 31st, 2023, with the option to extend the contract by 2 one-year periods, subject to the town entering into listing agreements for specific properties at the town's sole and absolute discretion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Question? Yeah, I just. Councillor Govesi, please.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to CFIS. I'm not going to support this recommendation. Since the RFP was put out in February, the market has drastically changed since then. So with the proponent that you're recommending, it says 5% commission, which I think in today's market, I think's probably too high. I think we could probably get it for at least 4. I can speak from personal experience, commercial property, 3%. Definitely if it's double-ended, which I'm assuming 4%, if direct means double-ended, should be 3%. My other concern would be the hourly consulting fee. The commission fee is what they make. I don't expect to pay $200 an hour on top of that for any type of consulting services. Like their job is to sell the property. If they sell it, they make the commission. So I kind of wondered why, like at least Colliers International had 5% up to $1 million and then 4% after $1 million, and they did not provide a consulting fee. So I mean, I would take that to be as a 0, or is it not? Like I'm unclear. Yep.
Yeah, that was the one question. So Colliers 0, what does that represent? Good point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councilor Govesi. Thank you for the question. In terms of the real estate consulting fee, I do want to make the point that this is not relating to a listed property. This would be for other advice that we're seeking. So some of the deals that we're seeking are complex transactions, and they may not actually ever result in a listing for the agent. So what we have here is this would be a fee that if we're asking them for specific advice relating to a complex deal, it'd be more like a consulting fee as opposed to a listing arrangement. I believe they've noted in their agreement that, or in their proposal, that if that did result in a listing, they would actually subtract the consulting fee, any consulting fees paid from the commission payable. So really these are for three separate items here. Again, one would be a proposed commission fee if there was a listing. The second, of course, would be the real estate consulting fee. And the third would be if there was an opinion of value. So these are three different fees for three different services, to clarify. Then with respect to Colliers, and to clarify that point, the way I understood their proposal and in talking with them, we did interview them as well, is that they were not providing those consulting services. So that's how I understood their proposal provided. They were interested in the listing fee, I guess, is what's clear.
Continue.
Sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Cephas. Okay, so consulting services. So if you had questions about property, but we would not be using legal for situations like that. Like if there's some complex properties that we're not listing with a real estate agent, we would not be using legal.
Through the mayor again, to Councilor Hovezi. So of course we would use legal for legal matters. This is relating to real estate strategy. So we're looking to develop, for example, a number of pieces of parcels of land. So it'd be on strategy on perhaps the best way that we can do that to maximize value for the town of Tillsonburg.
Further questions for to the resolution or to Mr. Pancho? Councilor Parker, please.
Through you to Mr. Pancho. With the 5% commission, it looks like that is going right. Was there negotiate, or is there negotiation available to try and bring that down after selecting it? I know it's a contract, but seeing as though there are other options, is that a possibility?
Through the mayor to Councilor Parker, certainly, I mean, we've gone through a competitive process. I think that you can quite clearly see that it's fairly comparable across the different brokerages. That being said, each property is a little bit specific. So I think there is some latitude to say this property has these conditions and we can try to negotiate a bit better because it is specific to the property. So, but in general, I think these are the comparable rates. Thank you.
Further, Councilor Esseltine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Pancho. So I believe in your report, Cephas, it says that we wouldn't be using this company for every property that we sell. It would be for significant properties. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, Councilor Esseltine, that's correct. This really arose in identifying, for example, some parcels of industrial land, larger parcels that we weren't receiving interest in at one point. So really that's where this arose from. The idea was to maximize exposure in the marketplace, which is what realtors do, of course. So so I think that it would be for properties that we deem high priority, that we want to ensure that we get the maximum value again for the town of Tillsonburg and for the ratepayers. Thank you.
Councilor Gavesi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a follow-up. I remember when this was brought forward in Economic Development Committee. I think a lot of things have changed since then, though. So how many acres do we have left in the Van Norman Industrial Park to sell?
Thank you for the question. Again, we currently have 12.61 acres, and pending what council makes in terms of the next decision we have on the agenda, we may have less.
Exactly my point. So I think there's a few things. Number one, the market's drastically changed since February. Real estate industry is not as busy as it was. I can speak from personal experience. So I just feel, I still am not going to support this because we also don't have any industrial land until we develop the next phase at this point. And you know, if that's like one of the reasons that we're going to be using it for, I just don't think at this point, maybe it's required. So I have confidence right now in your abilities to sell whatever's remaining. Thank you.
Any further? Just a couple of things from my perspective, going back to the summary comments under the background, originated through endorsement in January. The deadline for the RFP material to arrive back was in February, 7th of February. Read that correctly? So these 5 that met the criteria that were then categorized and rated all responded in advance of the 7th of February. Is that correct? And it's now the 11th of July. So I kind of think there's a bit of datedness regardless of the figures. Appreciate the 5 of the 4. I mean, it's competitive relative to those in the others. So how familiar are you and your team with this potential option relative to their accessibility and their time and turnover regarding some of the things that may be requested of them, the services that you may require of them? I don't know.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, in working with this company, we did interview them as well and asked them about their service levels. We did check their references as well, and we received glowing references. This team is a leading team in Southwestern Ontario and have been strategic advisors and also listing agents on a number of key properties throughout the province and including the town of Tillsonburg. So they're familiar with this community and they understand that how aggressive we are in terms of economic development. So I think that they are a strong candidate as evidenced by the numbers and the proposal that we received. So I hope that answers your question.
Good. No, there's comparators to local access versus time management versus experience. And there's a clear indicator from a financial or a fiduciary aspect on which is the greatest value. You're in with no consideration if that's actually good value. I'm just saying it's a very clear cut on which provides the best value. Then it's about, can they make the deliverables that are expected by you, your leadership and the department. If an agreement was signed with the recommended company and no property was sold and no consulting was provided and no other service deliveries were called upon that are in the terms and conditions of the agreement, what would be the expense to the corporation by the time the first year as referenced expires?
There would be none, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. It's part of my kind of defense. And maybe, I guess my other questions are really about the opinion of value. Does this come up for us in a number of ways? Although in the report, a broker opinion of value sometimes referred to as broker's price opinion is an assessment of a commercial property's value. Are we engaging potentially in an agreement that will at least provide services on other municipally owned parcels of land?
Yes, that's correct.
Any request that we make for a opinion of value is in a inventory in the agreement that they are in a position to provide for.
I think, Mr. Mayor, so again, this is at the town's discretion whether or not to retain this particular company's services. So if we wanted to identify a key property that we want opinion of value for, we would ask them to engage at that level.
Okay, that's, I think, if value already relative to the moving parts on a number of other initiatives that are in the public domain. So the final question, maybe more through to the Director of Corporate Services, is this is potentially a multi-year agreement It's one thing to give direction to sign. I'm of the opinion that it would require a bylaw if it extends beyond both a year and certainly a term of council. So what is your comment on that?
Certainly for any agreement, it's better to track it if it's endorsed by bylaw by council. I'm not aware of the term that's being proposed, to be honest, so I can't comment on that.
Okay, I don't know if that is relevant until a subsequent meeting where it can be ultimately adopting the recommendation, signing the agreement is not germane for the long term, but become a second year. It probably would be because municipalities can't make multi-year commitments. Mr. Pratt.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, the clerk's department has been making some excellent progress in tracking agreements. And there is a preference there to have it done by bylaw. So thanks to the clerk department for doing that. And if that was an option, that'd be preferred so we can track that. And of course, bring that forward to any new council. So thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilor Parker, please.
Through you, Mayor Molnar, to Mr. Panchow. With the next agenda item, if it's approved, would this company be contracted to be involved in any of that process? I know that the agreement is there. I'm just looking to see if there's going to be any fees from that sale that would have to be directed towards them.
Oh, and thank you through the mayor to Councilor Parker. Thank you for the question. Certainly, any transactions that we would be negotiating currently would be excluded from any listing agreement. That's for sure. And it would be specific to that, any properties in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, important question. I'm just mentioning that Mr. Panchow probably wants his 5%. Final questions for members of council. Resolution is a positive to support the recommendation. We'll call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. That was 4-2. And our final item under economic development is, as referenced very briefly by Councilor Parker, offer a purchase of part of lot 4 in the Van Norman Innovation Park. Councilor Gabezi, you have that resolution, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Council Esseltine, that a bylaw be brought forward to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with Shep's Bakeries Limited for property described as part of Block A, Plan 41M 381 in the Van Norman Innovation Park.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there questions to the resolution from members of council? Councilor Parker, please.
Not so much a question, but I'd like to thank Cephas for his work on this. I think this is a great opportunity for the community and to create economic diversity in the Van Norman Innovation Park. I think that this is a great opportunity for the town. So thank you and good work.
Thank you. Councilor Gabezi, please.
Yes, well said, Councillor Parker. Totally agree. Economic development, when we have had this discussion about the Van Norman Industrial Park, have talked about diversity. And this is great. Welcome, Sheps, to Tillsonburg. We're looking forward to having you here.
Anything further from members of council? The only caveat and full support in the conversations that have been taking place leading up to this, and thank council without again prejudice for your anticipated support, is relative to any amendments in a conditional offer of purchase and sale that will be made. So this question, I apologize, isn't gone through to the experience of the clerk and the clerk's department regarding if we have through support of this resolution tonight and the subsequent bylaw that's later in the agenda, and there are conditions in there because they're conditional, get amended but within the time frame between acceptance and conclusion. Anyways, are those all staff delegated potential amendments at that point? that will not be impacted as of the, what am I talking, maybe the 19th of August, was a date in August that certain lame duck procedures, and I don't want anything to jeopardize this because of concerns on the scale and scope of the sale of land. But I believe because what we do tonight has given that outside of that time.
And in addition to that, we have a delegation, I guess, authority within our delegation policy and delegation bylaw that will deal with that. So if council is in that lame duck period, then those powers and responsibilities are delegated to the CAO.
No, excellent. I just wanted to make very clear that we're moving down on this positive thing with totally covered. Then we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. Congratulations. And we'll see you in a few minutes, hopefully, when we review the bylaw. We move to Finance Department under the departmental reports. Councillor Rosart, you have a resolution. This has to do with council expense policy amendments.
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Parker, that the amendments of the council expense policy 2-008 be approved effective July 1st, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rosart. Discussion for members of council? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. Actually, I had a question. And I apologize. It's fine. It's not going to deter, but I think for clarity, it needs to be addressed. And it had to do with meal expense. Oh, let me find it. It was, sorry, Mr. Pooley. Under section, amended section 5.6 meals. Members may claim, and it's an amendment here, rather than to compartmentalize breakfast, lunch, and dinner at conferences, trade shows, overnight events, rather than it's now a fixed amount of 100 with receipts can be used however based on those 3 times of nourishment. However, under section B, where meals are included in registration fees, the allowance is not applicable. Now that's been historically appropriate and fine. But going back to A, when we've segregated now, and not actually we haven't segregated, we've moved them all into one fund without the description of what a breakfast is worth, a lunch is worth, and what a dinner is worth. And I know I'm nitpicking here, but this now is moderately inconsistent. And I apologize for the late notice. I just had made this note, on the weekend. And I don't know if there's any kind of on the spot recommendation on how to deal with this in advance of the bylaw at the site. You understand my concern? Not concerned with anything in this report. It's not concerned with these 5.A and 5.B individually, but they do not, with the amendment of 5.A now, if you took out a lunch, but you don't know what a lunch, normally if you go to a conference and your lunch was previously $25 and lunch was provided at AMO, you take the 25 off, like you don't get that 25 because it's paid for in your, we don't have that breakdown. So whether there's just a breakdown of under 5.B, what the allowances are in lieu of conference expenses, that might be appropriate. And I know I'm overthinking it, but it's actually is a barrier just in, from here going on into the future. Any suggestions?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what if we kept 5.6A, the breakdown, adjusting, say, the lunch to $30 to bring it up to the 100, and where B, if the meals are included, then the breakdown in 5A applies. And if the meals are not included, then it's the $100. It would just then depend on when the.
Yeah, could you do something like
when
daily
the-
maximum is 100, but this is the prorated. You just said 20, 30, 50, I think. Does that make sense? And I apologize again for, the late aspect of this, but it will need to be, you'll make it difficult in the future if it's not corrected.
Right,
Okay.
so the breakdown would apply when the meals are not included.
Right. Correct. Very good. Mr. Pratt, please. I'll turn my buzzer off.
Yeah, through the chair. So some of the feedback we got from staff, and I think would be applicable to council as well, is depending on where your course or your conference is, some of the meals at certain venues where they're having them or certain locations are going above those expended amounts. So the idea was to have a lump sum, and I echo and also share your concern. I know that council receipts or council expenditures go to council. And staff goes to staff. So one of my staff is spending, $100 on a dinner. I'm gonna say, what the heck happened? Let's talk about this, right? They should be, because now it's with receipts as well. It's not a per diem. They're not getting that money. So the receipts should justify their appropriate expenses, and the manager would not approve it otherwise.
Understand, and that if someone wants to spend $100 on lunch and not eat breakfast and dinner, I don't know how I'm gonna go down that hole. I'm saying 5A and 5B, 6A, 5.6, A and B need to bring a bit of congruence to them, that's all. Yet, there's no need to hold this up either. And I'm prepared just to be defeated, so it's not. Anyways, those are my comments. Anything further from members of council? Then we're all prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Oh, we did. You're right, we did, and I apologize for that. That was for clarity, and we had already voted. So thank you very much. And I appreciate that. I apologize then for the time management there. Maybe that will be looked at in the future, the next time it's reviewed. Summary of reserves and trusts, Councillor Rosehart, you have a
Thank you.
resolution,
Moved
please?
by myself, second by Councillor Esseltine, that council receive report FIN 22-18, 2021 summary of reserves and trusts as information. Thank you.
Report for information, very comprehensive, thank you. Any questions from members of council? We'll call that question. All those in favor? Opposed, resolution is carried. And we move to surplus allocation, Deputy Mayor, please.
So, Mr. Mayor, this one, there's an alternate motion in here. So perhaps.
You can cede your resolution. I think if I turn my page, I have an alternate resolution.
That's right. So I'm questioning that the procedure here is perhaps the director give us the rationale of why he came up with the original resolution as opposed to the alternate resolution prior to reading it. That way we only read one resolution to vote on.
Yeah, it's the problem with, that's historically the problem with these is that you can make amendments at a council meeting.
Right.
And the public has actually seen the resolution.
Right.
They haven't seen the speaking notes. So I think your point's very well taken. Mr. Puglia, have you got a comment on the rationale in the report regarding the, and actually the report has a number, but it's not FIN 22-19. Comment on the rationale regarding bullet points 1 through 7.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on page 2 of the report, which is page 581 of the PDF. So I believe the number in question, so each number has a recommendation as to why that number. So a lot of it stems from the policy and its target amounts. So for example, and in terms of even the order of sequence in terms of which reserves receive funding first. So the change from the proposed recommendation to the revised recommendation, I believe, is just the amounts relating to the 254,000 to cover the town hall expenses under the capital budget. So the explanation there is that since the budget was approved, we have determined that the debentures are not eligible on studies. So there are two projects that this impacts. One budgeted in 2022. The other one, it was budgeted in 2021, which was a carryover. And so that one is the FCM amount that was provided in conjunction with the town's portion towards a facility assessment. And the 254,000 that was budgeted in capital for the design work for a new town hall. So the suggestion is that both of those amounts that are no longer eligible for debenture be now funded from the facility infrastructure reserve, and therefore part of the surplus be segregated to put into that reserve to now be the funding source for those two projects that were originally budgeted to come out of debentures.
Or to be fair, any other project that could come from the facility infrastructure reserve as directed by council resolution.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of key. These are all the benefit of council, unless I'm, reminded otherwise. These are all discretionary accounts that this surplus is being distributed to, correct?
Yes.
So Deputy Mayor, you've got two choices. You
Well,
can jump with yours, or you can either.
I believe the director has answered my question for me, because I'll read the original. And with the original, of course, there's always some flexibility for council to make some changes as we go. So I believe I'll read the first resolution. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Parker, that the 2021 surplus of $1,006,934 be allocated for the following reserves. $244,352 be transferred to the Fleet and Equipment Reserve. $21,770 be transferred to the Airport Reserves. $77,958 be transferred to the Asset Management Reserve. $24,000 be transferred to the Economic Development Reserve. $328 be transferred to the Facility Infrastructure Reserve to cover the $254,000 budgeted in the 2022 capital budget for design work on the new town hall, and $53,328 to cover the town's portion of 2021 capital project for facilities assessment. $22,904 be transferred to the insurance reserve, and the balance of the surplus, being $308,622, be transferred to the tax rate stabilization reserve.
Did you have comment? And then I've got Councillor Park.
Sorry?
Did you have comment on?
Well, as I said prior to reading this, the reason I wrote that or read that resolution is because there's always some flexibility that council can make some changes to these funds if some of these projects are not carried through, and they can be later changed, as would be the amended resolution. So that could be taken step by step. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Parker, please.
Through you, Mayor Molnar, to Deputy Mayor Barres. I would like to recommend that some of the wording in number 5 be amended. I think it's premature for us to earmark $254,000 for the design work of the new town hall that we're not sure that we're building right now. And that was part of the reason why why there was another resolution on that was put on by another counselor, was so that the $254,000, I have no problem if it stays in the facility infrastructure reserve, but by reading this resolution, we are earmarking it for the design of the new town hall. And that's my concern with having the resolution like this. If it's not amended, I will not be supporting this resolution.
Mr. If,
I just, with respect, Counselor, you just said, I'd like to introduce some options, then you came up with the options, and then you said if it's not amended. So, like, I'm gonna give you
Yeah,
every
so
bit of
if we-
opportunity. What I may suggest, if this is what I heard, is ask that you can move that the text after reserve be eliminated.
I am
in
making that,
12.5.
I am making that suggestion to the mover, yes.
Oh, that's friendly amendment. Okay. Sorry.
may I respond?
Maybe, yeah, I apologize. I was waiting for a amendment, so go
Okay,
ahead.
my concern was with my question to the director just prior to asking this. If the funds are put into the facility infrastructure reserve, does that necessarily mean it stays there? Because if those funds are not needed, can they be transferred later to the tax rate stabilization reserve simply by a resolution? Because if they're not, I'll take Councillor Parker's suggestion and amend my resolution. You understand my question?
I believe so. For you, Mr. Mayor, so just to clarify, yes, any funds in any reserve can always be reallocated by a resolution of council. The reason for the wording is because council has approved a budget in 2021 and 2022 with these projects stating that the funding was to come from a debenture. So all this resolution just allows us to just have on paper a trail that budgeted project will now be funded from this reserve. And it's not to mean that the whole amount will be, it's just that whatever is spent that would normally be covered by that debenture will now just come out of that reserve.
With that said, I'm not seeing where it's necessary to change the resolution. I'm satisfied with that anyway, with what the director said, because with a simple resolution, it can be changed when not needed.
Thank you.
Okay, original resolutions on the floor. Any opportunities for discussion? I got Councillor Kubasi, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Molnar to Renata. So I'm just clarifying. Council passed the budget. In that budget was the design for the town hall. The budget passed without funding for it. Now, with this resolution as written, it's going to be funded. Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the budget was approved with funding from a debenture. Because all budgets have to be balanced, so there has expenditure and revenues. So that the revenue portion was going to be the proceeds from a debenture. And as I'm saying, since that time, we have determined that that is not an eligible project, so we cannot use debentures. So if we do not reallocate a funding source, whatever dollars are spent against that project would have to be dealt with as a year-end variance.
If I may continue through you, Mr. Mayor. That money could also be put in tax rate stabilization though, and council could use that at their discretion, correct? If the town hall design were to proceed forward, council can move that. That's one fund where council has discretion. I'm confused about moving from reserve to reserve.
So reserves are just, unless they're an obligatory reserve, where their funds are earmarked and they're controlled by legislation or otherwise. Any other reserves are really dollars that we have set aside that we've earmarked for these purposes. But anytime council, either through the budget or by way of a resolution, can reallocate funds between reserves. It's just like saying, having a pot of money, saying $10 million and saying so much is earmarked for this purpose, this purpose, this purpose, and those can always be repurposed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Renato. So if this project were not to go forward, 254,000 in next year's budget, that would still be earmarked. Like, just say it doesn't happen this year, would that still be earmarked for the town hall project as a carryover into next year?
Only if the, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, only if the project itself carries over in terms of the expenditure side. Otherwise, if the project were to be closed off, then that funding would just be, that dollars would still just be in the infrastructure reserve.
Just for clarity, though, if the funds that were speculatively required to do the capitalization on part of a town hall end up in facility infrastructure reserve, end of sentence, period, those funds upon support of council can be still used for that particular project in whole or in part. Am I not correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why these are discretionary funds, not obligatory. So with all respect, I mean, I'm going to recommend that perhaps the easiest, not easiest, but to dispel some of the concerns, I'd suggest is 307,728 be transferred to the facility infrastructure reserve, period. There was no commentary with respect. I think it's an excellent report, first of all. There's no commentary, though, on how all the others were arrived at. So without that commentary, I think this would be succinct, and it represents, I think, this our staff's recommendation, and that's what I would recommend that we follow is our staff's recommendation on the disposition of these, reminding us all that they are discretionary funds, and one resolution of council can utilize all of this for one particular item in the future. But that's just a comment. Councillor Govies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the clerk, I have a question. So we've been operating, if a councillor sends in a resolution ahead of time that makes this script, that councillor is able to put that resolution on the floor, which I duly sent in this morning. So I'm wondering like how rules change from one meeting to another.
So the procedural bylaw does not make mention of a script. Script is something internally that the town of Tillsonburg has adopted and has used in past practice. So there are no rules in terms of what comes first. What we traditionally have done, though, is we've included the staff recommendation and any other motions that come forward. So we've listed that on the script, but it really is up to council to determine which resolution to proceed with.
I appreciate that, and I believe there's consistency in that. There was resolution on the floor or on the script, excuse me. There was a supplemental one, and the mover, the draft mover, had every opportunity to either cede that as has been done in the past. So I want to make sure that, and there's alternative ways to make amendments to the resolution on the floor, which would speak exactly to what the alternative resolution was. So it's all good, opportunity. I think what we need to do is kind of identify where council's support or amendment to the staff recommendations are. Councillor Parker, please.
Thanks, Mayor Molnar. I would agree with the comments that you made in regards to the resolution, where stopping it after the funding where it says reserve, I would be much more supportive and be willing to go forward with this if we stop it after the reserve. If it has the wording written in about town hall, I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
So relative to that, either the mover and seconder can make, I hate your word because the word friendly doesn't exist in Robert's Rules of Order nor in our procedural bylaw, but it is your resolution, it is on the floor. But you can amend, not amend, but you can alter the text of your resolution prior to it being called to vote. The only other option then is a motion to amend, which can a mover, any of the members in council can move to a resolution to delete the words to cover the 254 budgeted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it would achieve the same thing. Oh, Deputy, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I would think that probably a third option would be to call the question, and if the question fails, then introduce another resolution, which happens to be in the script.
Okay. That's going to make it difficult because there's multiple moving pieces.
Right.
Understand that. So the support that some members may give to this are probably not going to support the other one. Okay, the low hanging fruit, really. Councillor Esseltine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we remove that then and just go with cover the 370,328 to be transferred to the facility infrastructure reserve, that could still technically be used for that purpose, but it doesn't mean it's definitely assigned to that. Okay, is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I think it's, without speaking to other texts that I've heard, I think the reference is prejudicing that transferability of the funds, if that's legitimate.
It's not what I'm understanding. I'm sorry.
It's-
Would you repeat that?
I'm only, it's not my opinion. I'm trying to analyze what I've heard member of council suggest that his concern is, which I would support, like I recognize that. Okay. Last, anyone? Okay, we're gonna turn to the chief and director, you can comment.
Sorry, if that were to proceed as such, then I would need to bring a report back to council to then look at addressing the financing the 2021 facility assessment project funds coming out of the facility infrastructure reserve, and then any funds spent on to cover any work to do with the town hall to be funded from that reserve. Because technically, right now, it's coming out of the debentures and there's nothing different saying otherwise. So I would need to still receive council direction then to fund those projects from that reserve.
I apologize now. Why can't it come from debentures? If that's where it was budgeted from.
So, Mr. Mayor, what was noted in the report is that we have determined that the debentures through the rules through Infrastructure Ontario, they're not eligible for studies alone, only studies that are connected to a tangible capital asset. So once the asset is built, then any cost to put that asset in service can form part of the debenture, but the study alone is not eligible for a debenture.
I heard you say that, but that's my point relative to the capital portion of the expenditure, not studies, the capital portion of the expenditure. Okay, I don't hear any movement from members present to make any other discussion, so I will call the question as a question that is on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution's defeated. Well, it's defeated, so. Well, this was, quite frankly, it's pretty simple things. And, this was a good news story. This was surplus that was built on the backs of the men, the women, the people that were minding their dollars and cents to get value to the taxpayers, the residents, the stakeholders of our community. It's pretty straightforward. Now, doesn't mean I just meant. And we have moderately complicated it. Mr. Pratt, you had comment? Deputy Mayor, you've got comment? Oh. I
Yes, to the chair. So if I could direct a question to Mr. Pulia. Mr. Pulia, with that resolution being made, can you please comment and advise both staff and council how we move forward with the town hall project, such as the resolution made at a previous council meeting to do the dig holes and how that affects payment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so any projects approved by council would be funded just out of the general account, and unless there's a revenue source, it would be dealt with as a year-end variance.
Okay. Who's using the mic? Okay, I guess I've got the mic then. So I'm not in a position to do this, but I guess I'll have to do it by resolution and ask that the allocation of the 2021 surplus funds of $1,006,934 be brought back to a subsequent council meeting with it's very confusing. As he said, there's several moving parts. Are you in a position to bring back something to a subsequent council meeting with these surplus funds for distribution to other areas with the information of what you've heard tonight that doesn't go into a facility infrastructure reserve? Because that seems to be the bump in the road, is that particular reserve.
just go ahead.
I have
Oh.
I have a resolution I'd like to put on the floor, Mayor Molnar, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gilvazy, that the 2021 surplus of $1,006,934 be allocated to the following reserves. One, $244,352 be transferred to the Fleet and Equipment Reserve. Two, $21,770 be transferred to the Airport Reserve. Three, $77,958 be transferred to the Asset Management Reserve. Four, $24,000 be transferred to the Economic Development Reserve. Five, $307 be transferred to the Facility Infrastructure Reserve. Six, $22,904 be transferred to the Insurance Reserve. Seven, the balance of the surplus of $308,622 be transferred to the tax rate stabilization reserve.
Can you, for maybe all of our benefit, seconded by Councilor Bailey, thank you. Fleet stays the same. I'm looking at Councilor Gavazi's secondary amendment. Or,
No, he read the first one.
yeah, okay, but I want you to be very
Yes.
succinct on the variances that you're introducing.
So the only change to this resolution is to remove the portion after infrastructure reserve that specifies the town hall project. The $307,328 is still going in the facility infrastructure reserve. The only difference is it's not earmarked for the town hall, and the $53,328 to cover the town's portion of the 2021 capital project for facility assessment. That is all removed from this resolution. It's still $307,328 to be transferred to the facility infrastructure reserve. That's the only change.
So it's the amendment to delete the text.
Correct.
Yeah. Does that satisfy a need for a motion for reconsideration, Madam Clerk? It's pretty tight, but I'm pretty satisfied, like if we'd done it when. Maybe I should try to build consensus first, but I would cede your experience.
This is a matter where We have funds that need to be or should be allocated, right, based on a policy. That's what staff's brought forward. So I don't see this as once the resolution was defeated, that it can't be, I mean, there needs to be some action by council taken to do this.
I concur. We'll see if this works. The resolution on the floor is the same, except for item 5 does not have the text to cover the 254 up until the end of facilities assessment. If there's a concurrence that council understands that, then we'll entertain questions for that resolution as moved by Councillor Parker, second by Councillor Govesi. I think I saw Councillor Esseltine's hand.
I believe Mr. Pulia told us that he needs, instead of those projects being funded by debt, he needs, or by debenture, thank you. He needs a place to put that in.
It's right there.
Is that correct? Like you need to be able to designate what is not being funded by debt anymore, where it's being funded by. Is that what you told us earlier?
Just real quick. Councillor Parker, is your intention by removing those words that the funds expected, as Mr. Pratt had appropriately just indicated regarding the borehole drillings and some of the things already approved by council, that it needs to come out of the 307, 328, and that there's nothing in this resolution that precludes that from happening?
100%. That is exactly what the
Seconder,
meaning of
anyone?
this is.
I'm just.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
So back to Councillor Esseltine, and then we'll open the floor. So we understand the breadth of the resolution. Councillor Esseltine, did you want to continue?
No, I just wanted to make sure that what we were doing would allow Mr. Pulia to do what he needs to do.
Further
Regarding the funding.
questions? Oh, sorry.
No, that's.
Sorry. Anything further? Then we will call the question. All those in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? Oh, we're running out when there's 6. Thank you. We move to operations and development. There's a report regarding receipt of tender for the retaining walls along Beach Boulevard and Quarter Town Line. Councillor Parker, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Esseltine, that council not award tender RFT 2022-003 retaining walls reconstruction at Beach Boulevard and Quarter Town Line, as the lowest bid received exceeds the total budget by $355,487.98, net HST included, and that council directs staff to find cost savings within the project design and retender for the 2023 construction.
Discussion? I don't know if any questions? I don't see any from council, but I do. Oh, there's a little guy. I'm sorry, Carlos. Carlos is joining us electronically. I did not see him. I was focusing on Richard at the back. So any questions I'll be direct are really about time management. Support the resolution. I think it's a creative way to go back to the market. Review the scope of the work, which is what staff is prepared to do. But my question would be then, what's the timeline for that internal review and any amended RFT and subsequent return with a recommendation to council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, our plan is to have this project retender by November 2022. And potentially award by council December this year, so we can prepare for a 2022 construction.
No, that's fair. It'll probably be December decision, which is not an issue. Okay, thank you. Further questions from members of council? And we're prepared to call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. Excellent. Also under operations and development is the utilization of the Tillsonburg Regional Airport. This is a airport master plan implementation update. Councilor Rosehart, you have that, please?
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councilor Esseltine, that the report OPD 22-30, 2021, Tillsonburg Regional Airport Master Plan Implementation Update be received as information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion? Councilor Gavesi, please.
Thank you. I have a few comments. I know the town had made a presentation at SWAX. One of the important components of the master plan was an airport development fund. SWAX received it as information. Has there been any follow-up, or will the town be going back to make another presentation?
Thank you. That's a good question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we're planning to go back for the next budget season to both the county and also Southwest Oxford as a reminder of this development fund for the airport.
Thank you. I have a couple comments. The trees, so the finally, I know that you're moving forward with taking out the trees at the end of the runway on the town-owned property, but somehow along the way, we've lost sight of the trees that are on property that are not owned by the town. So I just want to bring that forward. Extending the ramp slated for 2025 is probably not the required timeline. It probably needs to be done sooner. So this brings me to another point. For a number of years, we've done some project at the airport, and the funding was for future land sales. And we haven't, as a council, seen anything with regards to any land sales at the airport. And I think that something like the ramp, which is really important, it's imminent, it needs to be done, it's overcrowded, it's unsafe, that there has to be something brought forward in the near future. Well, I guess it probably would have to be next term because we'll be a lame duck council, but at some point in time, some land sales need to occur to generate revenue for the airport. Thank you.
Further questions regarding the resolution that's on the floor? Mr. Pratt, please.
Thank you, Mayor Molnar. If Carlos could come back online there was a comment there about not addressing the trees on the property. I know you have been looking into that. Can you provide comment and the challenges there?
Thank you. Yes, I guess at this point, what we're looking to do is just to remove the trees that are within the town property. There is more complication to remove the trees that are not within the town property, as we need to negotiate with the owners, and also additional requirements, studies will be required because there are trees that are on property on private land. However, the plan for this year is to complete all the removals, all the trees that are within our property.
Think further? A couple of quick things from my perspective, and actually, what a great report. It took the individual and compartmentalized aspects of the AMP asset, or the airport master plan, excuse me. And status, challenges, timeframes, and it's received as information. So the one thing I would encourage, of any of the items in the right-hand columns that have expectations in the 2023 business plan and budget, that they are prioritized, and the Airport Advisory Committee or certainly remain involved in guiding that as we advance into our 2023 business plan and budget. Kind of excited on a couple of things regarding the marketing campaign. I'm glad the question was asked, and I'm glad I heard the answer. That presentation to both Southwest Oxford and importantly to the County of Oxford will be maintained into the business plan and budgeting process. potentially with a new council at the county that has a vision for connectivity and regionalization of air transit, is the same way as, rails to trails and other important initiatives in the transportation sector in the southwestern quadrant of the province of Ontario. The air sector of one of 7 key sectors in the Southwestern Ontario Master Transportation Plan is exciting. It's invigorating. It's not fully been released by the minister yet, but air matters. So do bridges, so do culverts, so do roads, so do active transportation, but it's not all one versus the other. And there's a lot of great opportunities to this community, both within our boundaries and those assets that we control outside our boundaries, that that the partners need to identify that there's value to them in as well. So there wasn't a lot. I mean, I would encourage anyone to read the report. It's received here as information, and marketing, some of the things that are coincide so well with some of the other regional airports and their governance structure. So anything further? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. There's also a report under operations and development regarding a bag, leaf, and yard waste collection program. And I believe Deputy Mayor has that resolution, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Rosehart. The council authorizes staff to explore the change in the former loose leaf collection program to curbside bagged leaf and yard waste collection program. And the council directs staff to proceed with submitting a request for tender to retain a qualified waste collection contractor to provide curbside bagged leaf and yard waste collection service in 2022.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. The questions from members of council. Councillor Gavezi, please.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Well, regarding it's estimated to be $90,000 to implement the current leaf pickup program. And it says $57,000 in equipment, and then the rest is in labor. So I'm struggling with where the 90,000 comes from. So the town has already purchased the equipment. I realize there might be repairs or things like that. And the labor is getting paid, whether they're picking up leaves or doing another project. So how exactly did you arrive at the $90,000 cost?
The labor does get, am I working? Okay. The labor still gets paid. However, what typically happens is during the time we utilize all of our staff throughout those 4 or 5 weeks of the loose leaf collection. What typically happens during that time in other municipalities and municipalities I've managed before this is that's the time that we start to prepare all of the plows and everything ready to get ready and get all the training done for winter operations. So instead of the staff being allocated to that preparation, that's pulled back into late September and into October to do all that prep work so that we're ready into November to collect the leaves. So it's not a savings of labor. We're able to establish some efficiencies in the allocation of our staff. So the $90,000, if we're not working, we're doing in other activities that we often don't have time to complete throughout the late summer and early fall activities, if that makes sense.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Richard. So typically, like other areas that might have the bag system and I think Norfolk does, I think I've seen it there. Are they hiring a third-party contractor to do that, or does town staff do it? What do other municipalities do?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Other municipalities typically will have that as part of their waste collection program already. So they manage all of the organics, all of the recycling, all of the garbage, and typically all of leaf and yard waste throughout the same contract.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may continue to Richard. Okay, so then the Oxford County obviously is in charge of our waste management. Do they have a leaf bag program for any other municipality in Oxford?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that I don't specifically know. However, we have approached the county in the past to talk about this, and it's something that this is something we took upon ourselves historically. Now, granted, I've only been here for 11 months, so I'm just trying to speak of years ago that we've taken on historically ourselves. And what I'm looking for is just basically trying to think outside the box and establish a way to provide that level of service and the way I propose here, an increased level of service to our residents, as well as providing for our staff to do the other jobs that they're best off doing at the time they're supposed to be doing them.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may continue, I understand that, but I guess I'm just saying if the waste management is picking up garbage in Ingersoll and they pick up their bag leaves, then why aren't we getting that service? I suspect it may have something to do with the transfer station, but I just want to make sure that the Tillsonburg residents are getting the same bang for the buck as other residents in the county. Thank you.
Well, just for clarity, Tillsonburg relative to curbside collection are getting extremely better service with the caveat that we collectively are all paying for it. So some people don't have the service, but they don't pay for it. So that's the conundrum, and I think that's the gist of a lot what we're trying to do. Is there merit to at least analyzing whether there's other options? Is that that's what this report is about. It's not saying thou shall be doing this. It's asking council's support to look at the option to see if it's viable at all.
Exactly. And to reiterate that as well, and to add to that, it's really looking at these are the costs coming back. What are the options? What are the costs involved with everything? And coming back to council to say, this is the method which we recommend the road we go down and have council approve that. This has no tie-ins to any sort of financial commitment on council's part in any way whatsoever at this point. It's a matter of give us a chance to gauge what the relative costs are going to be if we were move forward with this type of collection.
Further, Councillor Parker, please.
Through you, Mayor, to Richard. I guess I have a couple of concerns with, in the past, how has the staff made it work? And now you're suggesting that we change this process. Typically, it's always been done in the same period of time. I'm just wondering why now the suggestion to change it when it's worked relatively well. Our staff has been trained, or have they not been trained for moving forward? Because they've always been prepared for what's came in the winter seasons. So I'm just kind of questioning why we're making the suggestion to change the program right now when it seems like it's worked.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. To answer your first question, we're proposing to change. I guess when I look at this, we're proposing to change it because I'm here and I've had a look at how it operates. Has it worked? Yes. Has it been easy? No. It's been very problematic. The piece of equipment that we use requires a lot. It's not in great shape. It requires a lot of work to do it. And it's just, I look at essentially the service to the residents as well. They have one day that those leaves are collected. If they haven't fallen by that day, they're beat. I'm looking at something that provides whether it be 2, whether it be 3, whether it be 4, whether it be 5 collection weeks during that time, it gives that opportunity for it to occur over those 5 weeks, not in one singular day or just the week prior to their collection. I look at the weather resiliency. If it happens to rain or snow and they've had it bagged, we can still collect it. But if it rains or snows on that collection day, we can't do it. It's very problematic. I just look at the overarching advantages in addition to be able to garner the efficiencies from the staff.
Just to follow up, Mr. Mayor. You made a comment in there about with it being bagged, you're still able to pick it up if it rains or snows. However, a lot of people put that stuff in paper bags. So if it rains or snows and they go to pick that bag up, that whole bottom's falling out. Those bags aren't that strong. So we still have to go back and somebody either has to re-rake it and put it in another bag, or it has to be picked up somehow with our machine that picks it up now, right?
Three, Mr. Mayor. They're paper bags, but they're also multi-layered. I've thrown in the locations I've put bags out and it's been successful. Trust me. It really has been.
I would disagree. I can tell you that if you leave a paper bag out in the rain, when you go to pick it up, it falls apart. So that's my experience, but that's it. Thank you.
Rated this for, I guess.
Yeah. Further questions? We'll go through the chair. Councillor Rosehart, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Richard. Well, in the last 3 years, I've watched the guys pick up in rain and snow. And when those leaves are packed with snow, I can honestly tell you they struggle. The sewers get covered with leaves and I go out and I have 5 that I have to uncover because people do put them to the streets. And when it's raining, those leaves are running over top of my grates. It kind of bothers me because water backs up into my places. But anyway, I'm sitting on the fence. I'm not in disagreement with what you're doing because I think it'll be easier when I see those guys with that hose and they're trying to pick it up. They're struggling. They really, truly are. Paper bags, I think a lot of them now have people clean their yards and they already take them to the transfer station before you even get there. From Broadway, our way is all the trees. We are loaded with trees in our area and we have a lot of leaves. So I know I have a lot of leaves that I'm going to have to bag. I'm not in favor of that, but I'm kind of in agreement to see what's happening here because of our drains and because the snow time comes, your guys are out there plowing, putting the leaves back on our yards. And then we got to try to get them back out to the curb for them to come back and pick them up if they can pick them up and it doesn't snow. So I would like to see the report come back to see where we end up with the cost with the contractor. Thank you.
Mr. Pratt, please.
Thank you, Mayor Molnar. My question is to Mr. Richard Sparham. Both Councillor Rosehart and Councillor Parker had noted human resources concerns. I recall also hearing of human resource concerns and some of the challenges in picking up the leaves. Can you or Carlos please comment on that?
Then maybe Carlos can come back on and because I wasn't privy to some of the. If I can turn it to Carlos to begin with the response.
Did you hear the question, Mr. Reyes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's about the challenges of staff. So I think, well, this is an operational question, but I just wanted to say that one of the reasons of this doing this is also to, as Richard mentioned, is to find efficiencies. We noticed that that's also the time that we are dealing with preparation for winter work, for winter maintenance. So it's not the best time for staff. Now, going back to the detailed operations of what they do during that week, I don't know, Richard, you can just expand on what they're doing and any challenges that they have during collection.
Well, it's a challenge it's just a challenge that the amount that they have to go through with the equipment. They don't just use that one leaf sucker because it takes more than that. It takes some loader work, multiple trucks to help to try and bring it all into the vehicles to get it back to the back to the transfer station for processing. It's just a matter of just really managing all the staff at that time. That's really predominantly the human resources concerns that we have and being able to allocate our resources appropriately and efficiently.
Think further? Let's go directly back to the resolution to receive his information. Council authorizes staff to explore the change in the former loose leaf collection program to a curbside bag, leaf, and yard waste collection program. So I read that, to explore. It's an action item. It's not a definitive decision that council's giving. Do I understand that correctly?
Correct.
And the council directs staff to proceed with an RFT, which is again, the assemblage of additional information regarding the potential identification of a contractor, along with all other supplemental information that will allow council at a future time to make a final decision.
Correct.
So, and then actually under financial considerations, it's much the same. So it's, should council elect to proceed, the program, goes into potential funding options. So I've got it's about, and I think Mr. Reyes may have said it, it's about continuous improvement or finding efficiencies. And I would be less than responsible from my perspective to not looking at every available option if it's not costing anything to get that information. So I think that's what this does. It brings those additional informations unbiased back here. There were some things in, we're pretty excited about picking up leaves and yard waste, where I'm going to remain adamant that we should be focused on picking up all curbside collectibles, which we could do with a modified or amended agreement with the County of Oxford in the the solid waste management recycling responsibilities in the non-exclusive capacity that exists on the collection side of things. So maybe that's something else we learn as we walk down this path, is the symmetries with one truck picking up. And if it's going to involve picking up bags, then it should be doing other things at the same time. Anyways, those are my comments. I'll support the resolution, but I'm going to support it in the vein that I believe it was intended, is to actually get additional information for the future. It appears that there's a lot of information still to be gained. I'd ask one final time if there's any questions or comments. The resolution that appears on the floor, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution's carried. Thank you, Mr. Sparham. And Councillor Govesi, you have a resolution regarding the supply and delivery of a articulating sidewalk tractor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Parker, that council awards RFP 2022-010 supply and delivery of a four-wheel drive articulating sidewalk tractor to Work Equipment Limited of Cortland, Ontario, at a cost of $176,496. And that council authorized funding of the purchase as $135,828.74 from development charges, residential share, and $40,572.22 from taxation.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The resolution is carried. We move to Recreation, Culture, and Parks. There's a positive resolution regarding support for facility access to the Tillsonburg Tri-County Agricultural Fair. Councillor Esseltine, you have that resolution, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gilvesi, that council receives staff report RCP 22-14 as information, and that council approves the request from the Tillsonburg Tri-County Agricultural Society to waive the facility rental fee for the use of the Lions Auditorium on August 20th, 2022, from 9 a.m. till noon to host the fair's baby show.
Thank you, Councillor Esseltine. Discussion? Deputy Mayor, please.
Excuse me, I believe we have a policy on the use of some of these facilities for groups. I know we did it for the Shriners and for the fair in the past. There is a policy. And I believe it's something that covers some of the costs. So maybe we should check the policy before we approve this resolution. A lot of work went into that policy.
I believe that I can speak to her, Julie, or excuse me, Ms. Columbus, Director Columbus. Could you give us a bit of the background on this? I understand you're in transition. This communication probably started in advance of your tenure, but you might have some feedback.
Thank you, Mayor. Andrea did do some research on the policy. There is a policy that exists, and if I can look quick enough, I can go back and find it, but it was reviewed last week and we still were requiring to do the report to council. We were trying to get it in for the July council date as a requirement so that they would have the information moving forward for their August 20th event. But the policy did not cover this request. So I will go back and find that information. I apologize, it's not on the top of my head right now, but we did do some research on that specific topic.
Continue.
I'm not going to be a stickler on this. I think it's important that it goes through. Maybe we should just approve this one right now, and then for another time, we'll review the policy. Thank you.
Further questions? I would encourage, beyond the support of this is, I think, what did I work it out to? 100 and where are we here? And this is with all due respect, that's kind of, I hope that we consider it a no-brainer in the relationship in the 168 years that organization has been providing sustainable value to this community and region, outside of the impacts that they've had over the last 2 years. So to celebrate that and remind everyone that from August the 19th to the 21st is the 168th annual fair. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolutions carried. New business consideration of committee minutes. Councillor Parker, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Barras, that the June 14th, 2022 Economic Development Advisory Committee minutes be received as information.
Thank you. Single set of minutes. Questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. Are there any notices, motions to be appropriately brought before council at a future meeting? Seeing none. There is no executive or closed session this evening. Bylaws. The bylaws on the agenda. We'll turn to Deputy Mayor Barras.
Thank you. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Galvezi, that a bylaw to establish the rate of remuneration for members of the council of the Corporation of the Town of Tillsonburg for 2022 to 2026 term of council, and a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 3295 is amended. That's under ZN 722-03, and a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 3295 is amended, ZN 722-04, and a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement of purchase and sale with Schweppes Bakery Limited for property described as part of Block 1, Plan 41M 381, part of Lot 4, in the Van Norman Innovation Park, be read for first, second, third, and final reading, and the mayor and the clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign the sale, sign the same, and place the corporate seal thereon too.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council, you've had the opportunity to peruse the text of those bylaws. And we're going to go to the top, Madam Clerk or Director of Corporate Services.
I just wanted to indicate that item 8.2 was the zone change application that was actually denied.
Oh, you're
So
right.
we'll need to pull that bylaw. So that's 17.2.
On third reading, thanks, Madam Clerk. I'm looking for your text. Oh, 03. So bullet point 17.2 on page 11 of your speaking notes. We'll eliminate that. Will you concur, Deputy Mayor? For the third reading and Councillor Galvezi? Okay, so it's 17.1, the minutes may reflect differently, but 17.1, 3, and 4 are your third readings of your bylaws this evening. Questions on those? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, resolution is carried. Confirmation bylaw, Councillor Govazy, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Esseltine, that bylaw 2022-050 to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on July 11th, 2022 be read for a first, second, third, and final reading, and that the mayor and the clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign the same and place the corporate seal thereunto.
Thank you. Councillor Govazy. Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, resolution is carried. As we approach our allotted time this evening and get closer to our adjournment, remind us all that our next council meeting is the 8th of August, 6 o'clock. And following that, September the 12th at 6 o'clock. Are there any items of public interest, general information that members of council would like to share? We'll start with Councillor Rosehart, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Music on the lawn for the last 3 Sundays has been absolutely tremendous. On Sunday, there was over 300 people there from what Joni was telling me. She does an amazing job. Please, folks, come out. It's just amazing to be out on the lawn and have a really good time. On Saturday, there was also music in the park with the bands playing, different bands coming in and playing in the park, which I thought was very interesting. But I have a question to Julie about that. The Kingsman Band shall, Miss Columbus, we don't charge for tennis courts. We don't charge for pickleball. We don't charge for the hockey arena. We don't charge for the basketball nets that we have there. But we charge to use the Kinsman Band shell. And I was just wondering, is that different than the rest of the town? We don't charge for Annandale House. I'm using the yard. So just something that somebody brought my attention to while I was there. And folks, please drive careful. We have a lot more traffic in town and we need a lot more patience. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further comments from members of council? Seeing none, just a couple things to tidy up the end of the meeting with, echo the comments from Councillor Rosehart. We get into a monthly schedule unless significant items of business arise, and then the chair and in consultation with the clerk and the CAO are in a position to call a special council meeting, and we're not hesitant to do that based on development or other significant opportunities if they provided or presented themselves. But it's summer and to our own team, you know, and all the value that they provide to us. So we wish them and their families a safe and happy summer, just as we do as they've parked the big yellow school buses and the kids are out. I echo Councillor Rosehart's comments about let's all be a little more aware and safer of those around us that maybe aren't as capable of taking care of themselves. And so a lot of great opportunities here in our community to provide for safe, youthful enjoyment. And I guess I would, on behalf of all the council, I believe this is unanimous. What an amazing day the July 1st celebrations were. This is our first time. I know it's now the 11th, but what an amazing day in this community. And it really exemplifies and echoes the wonderful people, the organizing committee, the Tillsonburg 150, the corporate team that, you know, were wearing their colors proudly at various functions and things that Councillor Rosehart talks about, the music on the lawn. What an amazing event at Annandale, our National Historic Site, and just seeing kids like smiles on their faces. The number of strollers, it's, you know, that was impressive to see throughout the community. So to the organizing committee, the 150 committee, council for endorsing so much of those opportunities, to the volunteers, to the sponsors, to the attendees. And I would also be remiss that through all from the day, from the breakfast right up to nighttime, and the safe exhibition of the fireworks, which were absolutely fantastic, from our own fire and rescue team, to thank you to them as well. So I know that we all experience the same things, but to recapture Canada Day and the town of Tillsonburg's 150th celebration on behalf of all those that experienced it and helped us or helped to really organize it. I believe we all say thank you. At that point in time, Councillor Rosart, do you have a resolution to adjourn this evening's meeting, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Parker, that the council meeting of July 11th, 2022 be adjourned at exactly 8:48 PM, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, resolution is carried. Again, on behalf of council, please have a safe and enjoyable summer. We'll see you in August.